Welcome back to a bulletin. In our first story, government could in the coming weeks begin the process of raising $3 billion in Eurobond sale. We are however learning the government is planning to use the funds to be raised to clear maturing debts and some expensive loans.
Over the past decade, overall debt in Ghana has been very high. To the extent that, yes, our DSA, debt sustainability analysis, indicates that Ghana is at high risk of debt distress. So there are mechanisms for government to first manage the existing stock of debt by what we call reprofiling. So try to substitute the expensive debt with lower and longer term debt. So any debt that is short term at very high interest rates, you could buy them out with longer term but lower interest loans. So that debt reprofiling has been ongoing, and I believe the Ministry of Finance and the Treasury in particular have been working on something along those lines.
So I get you that you approve of government's plan to issue this $3 billion Eurobond that is almost through and going onto the market?
If it's going to be used in a way that will reduce the overall debt burden in the long term, then it's a positive for Ghana. That's the key challenge, is to ensure that the overall long-term, medium to long-term debt profile will be brought down and less of a burden on Ghana. But you also asked, should government go out and borrow more for infrastructure? Our view would be to try and bring in public-private partnerships more, where the infrastructure pays for itself. And government can make a small contribution, but government should not be the ones to pay for all of the infrastructure. Some of the infrastructure can be paid for through a tariff system, and this is what PPPs are for. So a mix of infrastructure investments that include those that will pay for themselves, roads, bridges, ports, airports, water supply systems, are just a few examples of the kinds of infrastructure that could easily pay for itself. So more of that could be done.
World Bank Country Director Henry Kerali speaking there to my colleague George Yafe. Now, the Director of Diaspora Affairs, Office of the President, that is Akwesi Abibio, says government is engaging relevant stakeholders in the financial services sector to help reduce charges on remittances to step up revenue generation. He spoke with Joy Business at the Africa, Caribbean and Pacific Group of States and EU Regional Thematic Meeting held in Accra.
High cost of transfer funds has been identified as a major hindrance to the flow of remittances into the country. Currently, countries in sub-Saharan Africa have been identified to have the highest cost of transfer, pegged at 9.4% of the transfer amount, which is 29% above the world average in 2017. However, speaking to Joy Business, Director for Diaspora Affairs, Akwesi Abibio said government is initiating steps to address the high cost.
Working with Bank of Ghana, having some of these symposiums and the conferences, etc., we are trying to see how best this can be done, and that also involves the registered members who are doing these transactions, all these transfer companies, bringing them into the equation as part of the discussions to let them know that the volumes are such that if they reduce it, they will still be able to make up the money that perhaps they do have for themselves in the course of transferring money. For now, the volume of our remittances, as we last recorded, it is about 3 billion. So for 3 billion, that is basically something perhaps more than our, other resources.
Mr. Abibio was speaking at the International Organization for Migration's Africa, Caribbean and Pacific Group of States and EU Regional Thematic Meeting in Accra. Sylvia Lopez Erka is the Chief of Mission for the International Organization of Migration in Ghana, Togo and Benin.
One element that is a challenge also, in addition to the cost of transfer, is access in rural areas. Because sometimes you have cheaper options, and I think in Ghana we have a lot of options. The fintech companies are doing quite well. The money transfer operators are diversifying, which is great. But what about the access in the rural areas? You're not going to use the cheaper provider if that means that your family has to travel a long time to get to that provider. So we should not just looking at the cost. We should be looking at the quality, the reliability, and the access to the rural areas.
On her part, the program manager for the EU Commission identified the need for regulations and policies to help harness the benefits of remittances.
Legislative frameworks are key to regulate, like the use of remittances and diaspora engagement, but it's a starting point, and then there's a whole discussion of the actual implementation of the legislative framework. But for sure, it's a key starting point.
Launched in 2014, the African Caribbean Pacific EU Migration Action provides technical support in migration to member countries. For Joy Business, Sheila Tamaklu.
Businesses and banks in the country would now be subjected to extra scrutiny anytime they deal with banks in Europe. Ghana has been put on a list of countries deficient in anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing frameworks. But how would that impact on the operations of firms and financial institutions in Ghana? There is more in the following report.
According to the European Union, the action was aimed at protecting their financial system from money laundering and terrorist financing risk. The EU maintained it was forced to put Ghana on the list of 23 countries, which includes Nigeria, because Ghana has failed to institute strategic deficiencies in the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing frameworks. The announcement also requires all entities and countries covered by the EU anti-money laundering rules to apply increased checks on financial operations involving customers and financial institutions from Ghana and other listed countries to better identify any suspicious money flows. The warning could mean that every commercial bank in the country could be scrutinized any time that they are dealing with banks from the European Union and even any other financial institution that is covered by the Union's anti-money laundering rules. The development could also mean that more time could be taken in processing some financial transactions from Ghana. It may also affect some businesses that might be seeking fresh capital from their partners outside the country. The action for some raises questions about the current structures in place at the Bank of Ghana and even the operations of Financial Intelligence Center to deal with these issues.
Let's do something on pensions next. And Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of People's Pension Trust Ghana, Samuel Bediako Waterberg, has called for a national policy to whip up public interest in pensions. Statistics from the National Pensions Regulatory Authority indicates that less than 1% of Ghanaians in the informal sector are signed on to a pensions program. At the maiden People's Pensions Conference, Samuel Waterberg was of the view that Ghana's savings to GDP ratio could rise should a national policy be instituted. There is more in this report.
Ghana's old population heavily dependent on family and friends, concerns have been raised over the need for an effective pensions regime. Speaking at the maiden People's Pension Conference, Executive Officer and co-founder of the People's Pension Trust Ghana Limited, Samuel Bediako Waterberg, argued the need for a national policy on pensions.
I think it's time to look at a national policy, knowing that if you look at the informal sector, the percentage is less than 0.00001% that have a pension. So we haven't even reached the 1%. So this is not just a company's problem, this is a national problem. So we have to come up with a national policy, a national campaign to educate people in the informal sector about why they need a pension and why they should come on board.
Director for Planning, Research, Monitoring and Evaluation at the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, Ernest Amate Vondi, stated more regulations would be adopted going forward to deepen patronage of pension products.
The primary objective of a pension scheme is to provide insurance against low income and low wealth in old age, and offer a mechanism for consumption smoothing, as economists will say, but essentially it means a saving function across one's lifetime to also relieve poverty and to redistribute income and wealth.
The Dutch ambassador to Ghana, Ron Stricker, also spoke on the need for Ghana to learn from best practices abroad.
You see that the partners from the Netherlands, the big insurance and the big pension schemes, lent their services, spent a bit of time here and see what they can do with the People Pension Trust and with its director, Mr. Samuel Waterberg, to start and to boost, of course, this People Pension Trust. I think that would be fantastic.
The People's Pension Conference brought together captains of industry in pension as well as international speakers of high repute. It was on the theme, Private Pension Fund Management, Local Standards vis-a-vis International Best Practices. What key lessons going forward?
Now, extending credit to small-scale businesses and other corporate organizations would be considered in future as part of the Airtel Tigo business initiative. That's the opinion of the CEO of Airtel Tigo, Mitwa Ngambi. Now, she spoke with Joy Business at the launch of Airtel Tigo Business in Accra. The telecoms company has launched the business solutions platform to aid small and medium-scale enterprises, government agencies, as well as other corporate settings to grow. Mitwa Ngambi says it is a way of remaining committed to Ghana's socio-economic development.
Expansion of businesses is a key indicator of economic growth. It is against this background that Airtel Tigo Business has been launched to help make businesses simple and grow effectively. This the company hopes to do by providing several solutions that go just beyond communications. Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry Carlos Ahenkra, who launched the initiative, paid tribute to the Airtel Tigo merger and noted that the relationship between the telco sector and businesses cannot be underestimated.
Because if you are not doing well in one department, I'm sure the others should be good. And no matter what it is, that company or that dying company must have some value that would be interesting to another group. So seeing Airtel and Tigo come together for us in Ghana, and for us, of course, particularly in the Ministry of Trade, is quite an interesting measure for us.
Ken Ashigbe lamented the issue of fiber theft, which he continues to say has significant effect on the industry. He called on all telcos to work with the chamber to address the menace.
One of the critical things that currently bedevils all of us as an industry is the menace of cable fiber cuts and the way it's impacting on our industries. So for Airtel Tigo to continue to be able to provide you this quality service, it requires all of us to be able to support the effort of the industry to ensure that we are providing that protection for the industry to be able to continue to serve all of us.
Later in an interview, CEO of Airtel Tigo, Mitwa Ngambi, noted that extending credit to some companies could be considered as Airtel Tigo evolves.
Our portfolio is continuously evolving. Today what we provide is connectivity solutions. Of course, with the evolution of our solutions and products and services, things like that could definitely be looked into. What we provide are mobile fixed solutions, connectivity solutions. These that we guarantee from a portfolio perspective to give more value than anywhere else in the market. If anybody wants to know more details about those products and services, we're happy to serve them with that.
The occasion was also used to reward some customers of the company.
All right, you're watching Business Live. Vodafone Ghana has appointed Mrs. Patricia Obonai as its new Chief Executive Officer with effect from the 1st of April 2019. Madame Obonai, the lady you see in your shots right now, is a member of the Vodafone Ghana's Executive Committee and is the first Ghanaian to be appointed CEO of Vodafone Ghana. An engineer by profession, she comes into her new role with 22 years of experience in information technology and telecommunications. In addition, she has extensive commercial experience in the telecommunications industry. Until her appointment, Madame Obonai was the director of Fixed Business and Customer Operations of Vodafone Ghana. She also led the company's consumer business unit. She joined Vodafone Ghana as Chief Technology Officer and a member of the Executive Committee in January 2011. Prior to that, Madam Obonai had worked for 14 years with Millicom Ghana Limited, operators of Tigo. So there you see her in your shots, Patricia Obonai there, appointed as the first Ghanaian CEO of Vodafone Ghana. Let's move on to other stories tonight. Director in charge of finance at Ghana Gas, Emmanuel Isel, says the VRA's indebtedness to the gas processing company is affecting its capital expenditure projects. Answering a question at the first media engagement this year to outline plans and to highlight the current state of affairs of the company, Emmanuel Isel said despite the ESLA debt arrangement by government, the VRA still owes Ghana Gas about $750 million.
Sometime last year, we were able to get an arrangement with them where they were paying $3 million every month, sometime from April. However, that ceased in October. And so altogether last year we received just around $20 million from VRA as against the average of $30 million that we give them every month. So at the end of the year, we have recorded a debt of $735 million that is owed by VRA. That would have been higher, but for the intervention of the Ministry of Finance by taking a bit around $230 million through a balance sheet restructuring exercise. So that is the state of the affairs with VRA. Push comes to shove, we would have to stop supply, but that is not an option that we are looking at now. Obviously, if 90% of your sales goes to a customer that is unable to pay, it is a tough one for us in terms of the finances. You are aware that as a young organization, we would have to embark on a number of capital expenditure to be able to grow the company. Unfortunately, we have had to rely on external borrowing to fund our capital expenditure. We hope that in the near future, once VRA begins to pay, we can look internally to generate some of these funds for capital expenditure.
Civil society organizations in the extractive sector are calling for review of the corporate governance structure of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, GNPC. The CSOs have been discussing the 2015-2016 mining, oil and gas, as well as the Ghana Commodity Trading Pilot Reports in Kumasi. Prince Appiah engaged the Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth, as well as the Ghana Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. He has more in this report.
The GNPC was set up to lead the sustainable exploration, development, production and disposal of the petroleum resources of Ghana. The institution is bedeviled with political wrangling, the latest being administrative war between the chief executive and board chairman over hiring of a procurement manager. Co-chair for the Ghana Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, GATI, Dr. Steve Mantiao believes the development is dangerous for investors.
It looks like under this particular government, in fact, previous governments have also done the same, but it looks like the whole problem in terms of politicization of a national commercial entity as strategic as GNPC has been compounded under this government, to the extent that in some respects it appears to me that GNPC is being treated as an extension of the MPP bureaucracy. I think this sends wrong signals in terms of the expectation of the international community to depoliticize GNPC and allow it to operate as a purely commercial entity.
Dr. Mantiao fears government might use GNPC to facilitate quasi-fiscal expenditure in the 2020 election if the current feud is not addressed.
So my particular worry is that if Ghanaians are not careful in the 2020 elections, we'll see a lot of quasi-fiscal expenditures being undertaken by GNPC through its foundation, all ostensibly to influence the outcome of the 2020 elections.
Let's do some analysis on this. Joining us on the line is energy expert Kojo Poku. Good evening to you, sir. Your thoughts on what is playing out at the GNPC?
Hi, good evening, and good evening to your viewers. Well, it's rather unfortunate that a strategic company like GNPC has now gotten itself in the midst of leadership struggle. People keep saying that there's a need to put in place a good corporate governance, as was being said on your platform. I honestly think that GNPC already has a good corporate governance. The law or the statute, the manuals, operation manuals are all in place. It is just a matter of a personality clash between two people who are well-trained, well-educated, and experienced in corporate affairs, which you would expect that they would be able to coexist in the boardroom. Boardroom wranglings is nothing new in corporate setup, but it just so happened that the personality involved is what makes this whole thing very surprising. And
so would you buy into the argument that maybe going forward, government should not appoint heads of any of the state institutions, and GNPC, for instance? And I want to pull up a poll that we have been running today, where we've been asking people whether or not government should go ahead to appoint heads of state institutions. And on that poll, or the outcome of that poll, we see that more people are discouraging that. Would you buy into that? Is that also an issue, the fact that these appointments were made by government?
No, not at all. Government has a right, as per the law. The president, because of the executive presidency that we practice, the president is responsible for appointing most of these chief executives. But what you seem to find in this particular instance is the chief executive and who his board chairman is. I would discourage government from appointing the likes of a party chairman in the boardroom. I think a party chairman should really concentrate in the affairs of the party, because, look, with all due respect, the party chairman is probably the second-ranking person in this country if the party is in power, next to the president, because he commands all the apparatus of the party within which the president operates. So you can see the weight of the person who you put in the boardroom. Now you have a chief executive. Imagine if it wasn't the chief executive of Dr. K.K. Sapon, who is also an astute person within the same party. So there is that clash at the highest level of personality. If it was any rather chief executive who doesn't want to get into trouble with the party, we would not be hearing of some of these things that is happening.
All right.
The board chairman would have otherwise probably had his way, so be it. But I think that it is the discouraging of appointing certain people within the party.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, energy expert Kojo Poku there, sharing his thoughts with us.